Hey everyone, today I'm going to be walking you through 3 mid-tier variable RPM coffee grinders on the market right now and why I would pick the DF64V Gen 2 over the others. And this video is for anyone who doesn't already own one of these grinders. But if you do, awesome. Because honestly, they all make great coffee. And this isn't some long drawn out comparison of specs like their grinding speeds or their hopper capacities, because for me, it really comes down to practical design, clean workflow, and their flavor profiles. And honestly, the Varia VS6 is pulling me in with those parameters. But look, this is my own hands-on breakdown where I'm weighing the pros and the cons based on how each grinder affects the coffee taste and what you're actually paying for. Now, if you find this video helpful, I won't ask for likes, but I'd love for you to subscribe. That helps this channel grow way more. All right, let's get into it. First up, let's begin by talking about the Timemore 078S. And let's start with its pros. I think this is a great looking grinder. It's designed for home use, it's compact, and that slim build makes it easy to fit into any kitchen setup. And it's got a powerful 400 watt motor, spinning a 78mm vertically aligned flat burr set. So yeah, we are going to be talking some specs here for a second. Now, these flat burrs are really only designed for espresso, but you can find a few aftermarket 78mm burr sets if you're the type who likes to upgrade your gear. It isn't a super common burr size, and there are maybe 3 or 4 options out there that I can think of. However, that 78mm burr size is slowly growing traction, so you might find more soon. One more solid feature about this grinder is its knocker. Now, I did say one more. Instead of the basic flicker to remove tension at the bottom, this has a twist mechanism at the bottom of the chute, making it really easy to use after grinding. However, the cons kind of outweigh the pros here for me. The hopper, it's accessible, sure, but never RDT your beans before adding them, or they'll stick to the sides as they go down. Also, popcorning is a little bit of an issue on this grinder, especially if you're hot starting. That is, if you're turning the grinder on before adding your beans, expect some popcorning, so don't leave this lid off for too long whilst you're adding the beans. And then the RPM control placement. Don't get me started. It's not very precise, and it's right at the back of the grinder, making it really frustrating to adjust. Then the grind adjustment mechanism at the front. I love the big dial, but if this grinder is on your regular kitchen counter, let's say 100 centimeters tall, you kind of have to bend down to line it up properly. It's just a little inconvenient. Then the catch cup visibility, this is another personal one for me. I can't see what's happening inside whilst grinding. And does also contain some mess, I guess, and this grinder does really well at that. But I personally prefer to see my grinds, especially when I'm trying larger or new doses or grind settings. So I would prefer just a basic setup where I can see the grinds going into the cup. Now, my final thoughts on the Timemore 078S is, it makes tasty coffee, which we're going to talk about a little later on, but the workflow frustrations mean it's not my first pick. All right, next up, the Varia VS6. Let's just mention that this grinder is massive. It's heavy, tall, bulky, which gives it that built like a tank feel, but it's definitely not a grinder you just tuck away. It uses a 300 watt motor and horizontal 58mm flat burrs, plus it has the option to switch to conical burrs. And that's huge. Switching from flat to conical burrs is a massive pro. You can also purchase 8 additional burr sets to adjust the flavor profile of this grinder, but for now we'll stick to discussing the default burrs. It's also the most expensive grinder here, so if you do start adding those extra burrs, we're talking a whole new price bracket, which we will cover off in another video coming out soon. Its pros, it has quite a few, I reckon. It has an 80 gram hop capacity, which is great for single dosing and more than the others. And the RPM control is right out in front. With a fantastic digital display, it is the best of the 3. Plus the grind adjustment is tilted, making it easier to see compared to the Timemore grinder. And also the catch cup, the visibility of this, you can better see those grinds coming out as you're grinding, and it's surprisingly quiet for its size. It's a huge grinder, but it's quiet. And then the removable chute. This makes it really easy for cleaning and maintenance. Now for its cons. That same knocker, it's not that intuitive, and you have to flick your wrist and turn it in a certain way. And what I often do otherwise is accidentally knock that catch cup over in the process. Now, the bellows too, it's rather stiff, which makes purging grinds just less satisfying. And honestly, that's really about it. I think I've mentioned everything. So my final thoughts are that it is an incredibly versatile grinder with a great display and solid features, but I think the size and the price might be a deal breaker for some people. Maybe the weight too. And then finally, the DF64V Gen 2. This has more pros than cons in it, just like the Varia did. However, it is the most affordable grinder here, yet it outperforms in many areas. Like, it's super quiet, especially when running without beans. And then you add your beans, kind of makes it seem a little bit louder, but I think that's just in contrast. It's still a super quiet grinder than most. It's also really compact, but still has a 300 watt motor and 64mm horizontally aligned flat burrs. Now, this is where this shines. 64mm burrs are widely available. You've got options from SSP, Lebrew, Gorilla Gear, Matza, and many more. And this means tons of flexibility if you ever do want to upgrade your burrs. And that's a little bit in contrast to the Varia, which works with a lot of burrs, but they are their own proprietary burrs. Now, the pros to the DF64V, I think the grind dial. This is fantastic. It is clearly visible from above and angled to perfection. As well, there is an adjustable 0-point ring, which is better than the Varia's magnetic static version. And then the catch cup visibility, you can see these grinds coming out really well. It's not my most favorite design, but I do love seeing my grinds. And the bellows, this is very effective and easy to use. As well, the removable chute makes cleaning and maintenance easy. Now, the cons to this grinder, I would say, are the narrow hopper. It doesn't hold a lot of beans in this hopper, as well as if you pour the beans in too fast, they can spill or pop out quickly. And then the RPM dial placement, it's not the worst, it's just a little bit awkward to reach back to. Now, I have also found one other thing, and that is it retains one last bean at the end of your dose. So you grind all out, but then you can hear one last bean kind of popping up and down on the burrs. And you either have to run the grinder longer, turn it off and on again just to grind that last bean, or you leave it alone and get a surprise leftover bean next time you grind out. So my final thoughts on the DF64V Gen 2 is I think though it is the best balance of price, features, and performance. So which one at this point? Well, I think the real tiebreaker is the flavor profile. So let me bring these other grinders back and we'll talk about that. When dialing in different roast styles, I went from medium to light roasts. I used blends as well as single origins. There is something that I did notice, and that is that the espresso profile generally also carries over to the filter coffee profile. So they carry the same similarities in what they make the coffee taste like. So with that in mind, the Timemore 078S presented a balanced combination of acidity with sweetness. Now, neither of these two traits were really overly pronounced in the cup. However, what stood out to me with this grinder was how clean and transparent those flavors were. It has a fantastic spacing between flavor notes, which did also create thin textures in the espresso with fast finishes in a light mouthfeel that sometimes in the lingering aftertaste turned tart sweet, but never unpleasant. Whereas the Varia VS6, on the other hand, gives coffees a rich, full-bodied, jammy sweetness up front that carries through into a silky smooth texture. And it provided a crisp acidity that was balanced with lingering sweetness in the aftertaste, and it was really enjoyable. And then the DF64V, this leans towards brewing bright, crisp acidity up front, followed by muted yet balanced sweetness. And it does tend to brew light-bodied coffees with thin textures, yet long, lingering, I would say enjoyable aftertastes. Now, I wouldn't pick any of these grinders based solely on one aspect of their flavor profile, but The body and the sweetness are what I tend to lean towards, and the Varia VS6 did the best job at that. It effectively delivers that sweetness that carries into a medium body, which is something that's often lacking in flat burr grinders. And then you think the ability to swap into conical burrs on the VS6 makes it an even more compelling choice to go with. That is, if cost or space isn't an issue, I would choose the VS6 first. But if I'm on a budget or looking to upgrade my burrs sooner or later, the DF64V makes a better option. And then as for the Timemore 078S, I guess while I enjoy the brews, the workflow limitations just kind of push it lower on my list. So all these three grinders have their strengths and weaknesses, and the best choice ultimately depends on your priorities. If you value sweetness and body, the Varia VS6 is a solid pick and it is super versatile. If you want a budget-friendly grinder with room for upgrades, the DF64V is all the way to go. And if clarity and workflow don't bother you, the Timemore 078S might be worth considering. Each of these grinders will certainly elevate your coffee experience. And let's be honest, no grinder is perfect. It comes down to what can you live with and what will make your morning routine smoother. So I hope this breakdown helps you decide which one fits your setup best. And thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. We'll see you in the next one.